while you're here, I got to ask you this here. We're following the Jussie Smollett case out of Chicago. And literally the sentencing hearing is still going on. I saw some of it earlier. And it was something that his lawyer said that I found to be quite interesting. They said that the case had been adjudicated, that the charges had been dropped. They had agreed to community service restitution. And then after this special prosecutor comes in to examine it, then they file literally the same sort of charges. They argued double jeopardy. And the judge rejected it, but they went through this whole deal and said, wait a minute, the case has been adjudicated. Why are we back here? Do you think if he gets, first of all, he's been convicted, they're going through sentencing, but the arguments they laid out, does he have a good appeal?
Oh, I think he has an amazing appeal. I don't see why we are here.
Let's look at the facts, and I'm going to have you decide whether he has a viable appeal or not. Check it out. My name is Nate the Lawyer. If you are new here, we talk about the law and the facts. If you're about that life, don't forget to like this video, share this video, and subscribe to the channel. So let's talk about the Jussie Smollett case and his chances for appeal. Now, if you've been living under a rock, Jussie Smollett was convicted of lying to the police and staging a fake hate crime against himself. Now, at the end of the day, Jussie was found guilty and sentenced to 150 days in jail and 30 months of probation. Now, his lawyers vehemently say that they are going to appeal, and this video is going to look at whether Jussie has a viable argument for appeal and what those arguments may look like. So, to understand the legal arguments, we have to understand the facts of the case. What happened? So on January 29th, 2019, Empire actor Jussie Smollett reported that he was attacked by two men on a Chicago street at 2 o'clock in the morning. Now, this was one of the coldest nights on record in Chicago. Here's a news report from that same day.
Brant Miller, here's the overnight update of the forecast on NBCChicago.com. You could still see a couple of flurries tomorrow. Look at that air temperature. 1 below zero for the high temperature. Tomorrow night into Wednesday morning, 23 below.
Now, here's how the news media initially covered the story on January 29th.
This is Jussie Smollett hours before the attack. He posted on Instagram saying he was delayed on his flight from New York to Chicago. He was attacked and beaten early this morning. Investigators say it all started when two individuals yelled out racial and homophobic slurs, including MAGA country.
Frank, don't have a last name on the cell phone, regarding a friend that was assaulted and battered when he walked out of his apartment. He's supposed to be well-known, requesting a report. Instead, the noose was placed over the friend's neck. EMS has refused.
He was near his residence in the Streeterville neighborhood when he was allegedly beaten and doused with a chemical substance and then had a noose placed around his neck. Now,
as more information started to come out during the days and weeks ahead, things just didn't really add up, to say the least. Here are my first impressions of the Jussie Smollett story when I spoke with fellow YouTube lawyer Nick Recader. So now everybody's like, well, Nate, you must have been fooled when it first came out too, because it was a believable story. Now, I'm going to tell people straight up, I wasn't fooled, not anyway, about this story. Now, when I first heard it, right? When I first heard it, I'm going to keep it real. I was sitting here with my wife and we was chilling and we heard the story. And she was like, it's so horrible. He got beat up by some MAGA people in the middle of Chicago. So I'm like, when did this happen? She was like, at 2 o'clock in the morning. The spider sense start tingling. 2 o'clock in the fucking morning in Chicago? And I'm like, hold on. There's a fucking polar vortex. Yeah, this is a motherfucker. It's like 10 degrees outside. I'm like, at 2 o'clock in the morning? What the fuck is he doing out there at 2 o'clock in the morning? So she's like, okay. So she's like, oh, no. He was going to get a Subway sandwich. So I said, they waiting for him at 2 o'clock in the morning to get a goddamn Subway sandwich? How the fuck did they know he's coming out the apartment? Oh, no. He was coming from the airport, went to his apartment, came out for the Subway sandwich, got the sandwich, and then came back home. And I'm like, yo, somebody was waiting for him all that time in Chicago with MAGA hats? And then we heard the story. They got bleaching ropes. I'm like, hold the fuck on.
Next black guy comes in Subways.
Two motherfucking white guys in the middle of Chicago with MAGA hats got bleach and rope at 2 in the morning waiting for Jussie Smollett coming from Subway? I'm like, what? is this really the story that he's pushing? I'm like, babe, something doesn't seem wrong with this story. It doesn't just doesn't make it sing. Now, because there happened to be a lot of questions about what actually happened and things weren't really adding up, Jussie went on Good Morning America on February 15th and he gave an interview to try to explain what really happened. Check it out.
I went out to Walgreens thinking that they were 24 hours and to have a smoke. Walgreens was closed. So I called them up and I said, hey, I'm gonna run to Subway, which was across the street. And I'm gonna get a salad, do you want anything? I went to the Subway and got the order. During that time, I texted my manager thinking that he was still in Australia because he was on an Australian tour with one of his other clients. And I said, yo, call me when you can. He called me immediately. And while he was on the phone, I heard, as I was crossing the intersection, I heard Empire. And I don't answer to Empire. My name ain't Empire. And I didn't answer. I kept walking and then I heard Empire. So I turned around and I said, did you just say to me? And I see the attacker masked. And he said, this MAGA country punches me right in the face. So I punched his ass back. And then we started tussling. You know, it was very icy. And we ended up tussling by the stairs. Fighting. There was a second person involved who was kicking me in my back. And then it just stopped. And they ran off. And I saw where they ran. And the phone was in my pocket, but it had fallen out. And it was sitting there. And my manager was still on the phone. So I picked up the phone and I said, Brandon. And he's like, what's going on? And I said, I was just jumped. And then I looked down and I see that there's a rope around my neck, which I hadn't.
You hadn't noticed it before?
No, because it was so fast. You know what I'm saying? It was so fast.
How long did this all
It felt like minutes, but it probably was like 30 seconds.
Now, after that interview was aired, later that day, police actually arrested two men who they believed were Jussie's attackers. Check it out.
Big development in the Jussie Smollett investigation. Chicago police have arrested two suspects in the case, believed to be the two men spotted in that security camera footage the night of the incident. Here's what we've learned about the two bodybuilding brothers now being questioned.
The Jussie Smollett investigation is taking a shocking turn with the arrest of these two men. Both know Smollett and have appeared on his TV show Empire as bit actors. 25-year-old Abel Osundairo and his brother Holla, 27, live 7 miles from where Smollett claims he was the victim of a racial and homophobic attack last month. Look, the Nigerian-born brothers are seen in this social media posting wearing black face masks, similar to those described by Smollett. Holla played a prisoner in a scene with Taraji P. Henson and Terrence Howard in Season 2 of Empire. He's also appeared in the TV show Chicago PD. There are other intriguing connections between Smollett and the brothers. Inside Edition found this video of Abel working out to a Jussie Smollett song. He even tagged Jussie on Instagram, Jussie Smollett. Ha ha, I love you. And look, this video shows one of the brothers doing handstands on a treadmill in the gym in Jussie Smollett's apartment building.
So it started to seem like this whole thing may have just been an elaborate hoax, a fake hate crime being reported to police. Now, interestingly enough, on January 19th, 2019, State's Attorney Kim Foxx recused herself. She's the district attorney in that area. And she did so because she had close ties to the Smollett family. Like, you know, she text messaged with Smollett's sister and so forth and so forth. So she had a real conflict of interest. But since she was the DA, her whole office actually was recused.
Then the controversial Cook County State's Attorney Kim Foxx recused herself. Her office issued this statement. Out of an abundance of caution, the decision to recuse herself was made to address potential questions of impartiality based upon familiarity with potential witnesses in this case.
Now, 2 days after that happened, police arrested Jussie Smollett for staging a fake hate crime and filing false police reports. Here's what the police department had to say.
Jussie Smollett in custody and under arrest just minutes ago. Police released his mugshot. Here it is. In just a short time from now, he'll be in front of a judge for a bond hearing. Investigators say he is no victim and that his story is now unraveling.
First, Smollett attempted to gain attention by sending a false letter that relied on racial, homophobic, and political language. When that didn't work, Smollett paid $3,500 to stage this attack and drag Chicago's reputation through the mud in the process. And why? This stunt was orchestrated by Smollett because he was dissatisfied with his salary. So he concocted a story about being attacked.
So now Kim Foxx appointed a special prosecutor to prosecute the case since she recused herself. Here's what she told her subordinate to do.
More than 2 weeks before Kim Foxx's office dropped 16 counts against actor Jussie Smollett,
State's Attorney Fox sent this text message to Joe Magatz, her number 2, who took over the case after Fox recused herself. So, I'm recused, but when people accuse us of overcharging cases, 16 counts on a Class 4 becomes Exhibit A. Magatz responds, yes, I can see where that can be seen as excessive. Fox replies, pedophile with 4 victims, 10 counts, washed up celeb who lied to cops, 16. Just because we can charge something doesn't mean we should. A reference to singer R. Kelly.
She should have totally kept away from this case. She shouldn't be talking to subordinates about the case. She shouldn't be even thinking about the case.
CBS 2 legal analyst Irv Miller points to the fact that Fox recused herself from the case, but is still talking about it.
Obviously, she was involved. Obviously, just by the number of these text messages, there was major concern going on after this thing went down.
So now this is where the interesting piece to this story comes in. So now under Illinois law, if the state prosecutor accuses him or herself, then they can't reassign it to someone else in their office because the office itself would be recused. Check it out.
The center of this case is the word recusal, and there are really 2 issues here. First, state's attorney Kim Fox said she recused herself, but did she? We're taking a look at her text messages. And then second, Fox did not formally, and that means legally, recuse herself. And now we're seeing an email from an attorney in her office that questions her authority in this case. Kim Fox's voluntary recusal in the Jussie Smollett case was under scrutiny, even by those in her own office. The I-team obtaining this email from Alan Spellberg, the supervisor of the Criminal Appeals Division, looked at the legal angle and wrote to office brass, my conclusion from all of these authorities is that while the state's attorney has the complete discretion to recuse herself from any matter, she cannot simply direct someone, even the first assistant, to act in her stead.
A real recusal under Illinois law means that the case would be in somebody else's hands, outside of that office, outside of her, and that's not what happened.
Now, this fact is going to be important later for our analysis on whether Jussie has a viable appeal or not. Now, behind the scenes, state prosecutor Kim Fox, who was recused at the time, messaged Jussie Smollett's family, I believe his sister, and advised her to tell Jussie to stay consistent. Check it out.
Basically, this text showed that Smollett's sister and Fox were in communication, and Fox says, your brother should be fine as long as he stays consistent. How does she stay in the job after this?
Yeah, maybe only in Cook County. I don't know. I mean, look, Dana, Kim Fox is a progressive prosecutor who broke from the strength of the case to her contact with Jussie's sister, to even Jussie Smollett's criminal record. They kept saying publicly he has no criminal record. He had a DUI with, of all things, a false statement to police conviction. That's a pretty material piece of information that they lied about. But the conversation with the sister is astounding to me because it really walks right up to the line of obstruction of justice. She's sitting here telling the sister, now that I know he's a suspect, as long as he's consistent, as in keeping with that false story, he should be okay. That's an amazing moment for a public official, a prosecutor, to be coaching that.
Then on March 26, 2019, the charges were dropped. Now, Kim Fox claimed a couple of things, the reasons why she was dropping this case. The first was that she handled about 5,700 other cases like Jussie Smollett's, and they were all kind of disposed the same way. They were dismissed and there was no jail time. She also said that $10,000 was the maximum fine they were able to get for restitution from Jussie. So even if the city paid $130,000 in overtime, the state's attorney could only really get back $10,000.
The maximum that we're allowed to get for restitution is $10,000.
That was what she said the law allowed. She also said that Jussie had no criminal history, no criminal background. So that also would lead to someone getting a dismissal like this, who if this was their first contact with the criminal justice system. And finally, she made the claim that the evidence just wasn't good enough to get a conviction in this case. Now, she said publicly that these were the reasons why her office dismissed the case, even though she had recused herself. But come to find out, these reasons were all lies. Check it out.
The Office of the Special Prosecutor's report found misleading and false statements by the Cook County State's Attorney's Office, like there were 5,700 similar cases, but the special prosecutor found few examples of similar cases.
Ever, on any occasion, have they ever resolved a case this way? They couldn't give me one case that had ever occurred in the past.
That $10,000 would be the maximum he could be asked to pay, but Smollett could be forced to pay restitution to the city. That Smollett had no criminal background was not true. He had a DUI in which he lied and got 24 months probation. And that there were evidentiary problems with the case. But the special prosecutor found in interviews, like an interview Kim Foxx did with ABC 7, where she said they had a solid case against Smollett.
I cannot ask Mr. Smollett to forfeit his $10,000 bond if I didn't believe we could meet our ethical burden in this case.
So after the dismissal, Jussie then made a public statement essentially saying the exact same thing that Kim Foxx had advised the family that Jussie needed to say. Stay consistent.
Texts show that Smollett's sister and Fox were in communication, and Fox says, your brother should be fine as long as he stays consistent.
No one will ever know how much that has meant to me, and I will forever be grateful. I want you to know that not for a moment was it in vain. I've been truthful and consistent on every single level since day one. I would not be my mother's son if I was capable of one drop of what I've been accused of.
So the fix was in and Jussie was going to walk free. Only thing he had to do was just keep his mouth shut and he probably wouldn't have had any problem. So the deal that the state prosecutor's office and Jussie Smollett came to was that the charges would be dropped and Smollett would perform 2 days of community service and forfeit his $10,000 bond. And Smollett would also be able to still proclaim his innocence. And since he didn't plead to anything, his attorneys and Smollett himself could go and say that he was wrongfully arrested and he was innocent of these charges. And as Exhibit A, look, the state prosecutor's office dismissed the charges. Here is Jussie Smollett's attorney going around the morning news shows saying that.
Let's talk about some of the facts here. Sure. First of all, is it your position that he is in fact factually innocent?
Absolutely,
No
question.
He didn't stage his own hate crime? No?
No, absolutely not.
He didn't send a letter, a fake death threat letter to himself? Okay. It's undisputed, is it not, that whatever the motive, the Osundairo brothers, they are the attackers here, correct?
When you say it's undisputed, there's been more information leaked than we've actually received from.
So Jussie was innocent and he can go free and do whatever he wanted to do with his life. But the police department wasn't having it. So since the fix was in with the prosecutor's office, the police department took the extraordinary step of suing Jussie for restitution. They wanted to get that overtime money they spent investigating this fake hate crime. Here they are talking about it.
Of all of the stunning developments in the case, this one was predictable. Lawyers for the city of Chicago said they would go after Jussie Smollett in civil court. And yesterday evening, 16 days after the Cook County prosecutor dropped all the charges against the actor, the lawsuit became official. The suit says Chicago detectives worked 1,836 hours investigating Smollett's claim of a hate crime. The overtime works out to be $130,106, and the city wants it back.
Now, in a twist, a judge reopened the case and appointed a special prosecutor to see whether Kim Foxx's handling of the case was appropriate or not. Check it out.
After an expensive and exhaustive police investigation and grand jury indictments against Smollett for manufacturing a hate crime, State's Attorney Foxx recused herself from the case and then dropped the charges. Today, veteran County Judge Michael Tooman unleashing this rabid order against Foxx, suggesting her communication with Smollett's family and friends might also be indicative of bias. Tooman concluding Foxx ignored standard recusal procedures by turning over the case to a top assistant. His appointment was to an entity that did not exist.
This really takes this prosecutor to task and effectively says there's a statute here, there's a law here that governs how these things are supposed to happen, and you didn't follow it, and now I'm going to make you follow it.
So I know what you may be thinking. How could they prosecute Jussie again for the same crimes? Isn't that case over? That would be double jeopardy. Now, for those of you who don't know what double jeopardy is, in the United States, double jeopardy is a clause in the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution that prohibits anyone from being prosecuted by the state twice for the same crime. And here, Jussie was prosecuted, right? He forfeited his bond. He did community service in exchange for dismissal. So another prosecution would essentially be prosecuting him again and would violate double jeopardy. And then also, if you think about it, you can make a contracts argument, right? That Jussie had a contract with the state's attorney's office and he fulfilled his part of the contract. Think about it. Both the state and Jussie entered into an agreement. And that agreement was for Jussie to do 2 days of community service, forfeit that bond, and they would dismiss the charge. Jussie did the 2 days of community service and he forfeited the bond. And now it was up to the state to fulfilled their part of the agreement by not bringing charges again. Should the state be able to renege on a deal after the defendant has done his part in the sentence? He can't get the time back, right? He can't get those 2 days community service back. But there is a problem with these arguments. See, since Kim Foxx recused herself, her office lost all legal authority to prosecute Jussie under state law. So when it comes to double jeopardy, Jussie was actually never legally in jeopardy because Kim Foxx's office, who made the deal, who prosecuted Jussie, actually didn't have the legal authority to do so. And since Kim Foxx's office didn't have the legal authority to prosecute Jussie because of the recusal, they also didn't have the legal authority to enter into any type of agreement with Jussie to fulfill that obligation. And any contract of the sense would be void, right? You can't enter into a contract with someone who doesn't have the authority to make that deal. And Kim Foxx's office didn't actually have the authority to plea bargain with Jussie. They recused themselves. Here's what the judge ruled.
In a 21-page decision, Judge Tooman said the problem boiled down to Kim Foxx's decision to appoint this man, Cook County State's Attorney Joseph Magatz, to take her place after she recused herself. Simply put, that was wrong. She had no authority to do that. She appointed Magatz to, quote, a fictitious office having no legal existence. He said a special prosecutor is needed to, quote, restore the public's confidence in the integrity of our criminal justice system.
So we have an interesting situation here where Kim Foxx did everything possible to help Jussie out. She created a fictitious office with no legal authority to prosecute Jussie and then prosecuted him with that fictitious office. And at sentencing, Jussie's attorneys argued these points. First, they claim it's not their fault that the state prosecutor violated the law and had no authority to enter this deal. How would they know? And that this essentially just violates double jeopardy. He was essentially punished twice for the same crime. They also claim that they held up their end of the bargain. He paid the fine. He did the community service. Why should he be punished again for the state's mistake? And why should the state be able to back out of a deal after it was approved by the court and after Jussie performed his part of the contract? They had a contract. He did his part. The state should not be able to renege now. Now, one thing you'll hear a lot of legal commentators doing is pointing to the Bill Cosby case as an analog for the Jussie Smollett case. Now, for those of you who may have forgotten about what happened in Bill Cosby's case, well, Bill Cosby was being prosecuted or was about to be prosecuted for sexual assault allegations in Pennsylvania. So let's just do a quick recap of what happened in the Bill Cosby case. See, the DA promised not to prosecute Bill Cosby if he testified in a civil case. Now, the reason why is he really didn't have enough evidence to try Cosby and convict Cosby in a criminal case. But because there was still an open criminal investigation, Cosby didn't have to testify in a civil case because you have the right against self-incrimination, taking the fifth, pleading the fifth. So to remove that right of Bill Cosby to plead the fifth, the state gave him essentially immunity, saying, okay, we're not going to prosecute you if you testify in this civil case. So Cosby took that deal. He said, okay, I don't mind paying some money. I'd rather not go to jail, and took the deal. So he wasn't prosecuted, and he then gave a deposition in a civil case. And that's kind of how we all knew of the horrors that Bill Cosby was doing to women. So later on, a new DA was elected, and that new DA then said, no, I don't like that deal. I'm going to prosecute you for those violations. And that's what they did. Now, the difference between the Cosby case and the Smollett case is profound. So let me explain. In the Cosby case, the initial DA that made the agreement with Bill Cosby had 100% authority to enter into that agreement. He did. And when he made that agreement on behalf of the state. So now any future DAs were bound by his decision because he was legally allowed to make that decision. But in the Smollett case, the DA's office was not legally allowed to come in to make that decision. They had no authority to make that deal because of the recusal. So for Cosby, the DA's office had authority to enter in the deal, and they did, so they were held to that deal. Where in the Smollett case, the argument is that the DA's office didn't have authority to make that deal and made it anyway. And so that since that deal is void, there is no double jeopardy, there is no contract. The deal and the position that was created was all fictitious. So now you've pretty much heard both sides of the argument. And what do you think? Do you think Jussie Smollett has a good chance on appeal? Do you think the case is like Cosby's and likely to be overturned? Do you think the state should be held to Kim Foxx's deal even though she didn't have authority or her office didn't have authority to enter into that deal? because Jussie Smollett, he performed his part of the deal. Let me know what you think in the comment section. Let me know what you think the court's going to do. And I'll see you next time. Peace.